All right, welcome back to the Conviction Fiction, the podcast where we challenge the stigma of life after lockup and highlighting the voices that are rewriting their stories. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers, and today's guest is living proof that redemption isn't just possible, it's powerful. Joining me today is Matthew Stevens, a regional detox specialist at Harbor House in Arkansas and a fierce advocate for restorative justice and alternative sentencing. But his journey here wasn't easy. Matthew spent 18 years in both federal and state prisons, serving 5 separate bids, and at one point was labeled incorrigible by the U.S. government and sentenced to 15 years. Additionally, now as an armed career criminal. So today we're going to unpack a lot of his story because of instead of becoming a product of the system, he became a challenge to it. While incarcerated, Matthew earned over 10 college certifications, guys, and came out with a bachelor's level education. More importantly, he came out determined to break the cycle that nearly took his life. Today, we're diving into his story from meth addiction and incarceration to recovery and leadership. We'll talk about why our current prison system is broken, how education became his lifeline, and what real justice looks like when it's rooted in healing instead of punishment. Trust me, guys, this is a conversation you don't want to miss because this is the Conviction Fiction. All right, I'm back. Matthew, let's start at the beginning, bro. I want to first thank you for joining today. I know you've been living a hectic life for the good since you've been home.
Yeah.
But let's start from the beginning. What was life like for you growing up in Arkansas?
Man, growing up, I came from, I guess you could call the American dream type family. Both of my family, I guess you could say there was faith based. We didn't go to church a lot, but they had a Christian foundation. And we grew up in an all white culture, all white society, pretty much. And so I was taught what would be considered the American norm, the way that my parents understood it, and that was predominantly white Christian culture, which is fine, and I don't oppose that at all by any means. But that's the environment that we grew up in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess my dad had a good job at a corporation, and I was spoiled growing up. We had four-wheelers, we had motorcycles. I grew up it was on a historical street. My dad had a good job, so he could afford one of those historical houses that you redo.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like in the hood. And so I grew up in the hood, but with, I would say, the American white privilege is what a lot of people in America would call it.
Okay.
And
So, let me ask you one question. So, when did substance use and criminal activity first into your life? Because I mean, as I'm listening, it doesn't seem like you should have been doing that.
Yeah, criminal act. Well, the substance abuse happened actually. When I started getting off, hanging out, doing what we do in the hood, and that's getting into a lot of fights and getting into. I grew up in the early '90s. I was born in '76, so I grew up in gang culture. I grew up in the crack epidemic. I grew up, exposed to all that stuff that America offered at that time, and I didn't actually start getting into substance abuse until I actually got transferred to the upscale school, where people were more prevalent to use substances. The school I came from, people were selling it for survival. They didn't exactly use it. But then when I switched schools in about the 10th grade, I was exposed to a different culture, and that was a substance abuse culture and a party culture and stuff like that. And
Right.
I started experimenting at that young age with coke and meth, and I became addicted. I started snorting meth, at 17 years old. And all my high school dreams and everything that I wanted to do in life, had instantly been substituted with that addiction and that substance. And what happens, obviously is, you're either just going to dope fiend all the way out in the streets, or you're going to sell it to support a habit. And, uh, that's what I turned to was, trying to sell it to support my addiction.
Yeah.
But I started involving myself in, getting addicted, in high school. I was an addict in high school.
Let me ask you this. So was there a point where you realized you were caught in a cycle that you couldn't escape? Or is there ever a point where you like, man, this is kind of bad for me?
Yeah, man, I didn't hit that point until about my third trip in prison, when I got caught up in recidivism and I got put into the cycle of just not being able to make it anywhere except prison, because doing all that amount of time, even though you just go down for 1 or 2 years at a time, but they were back to back. And the way that the system was set up back then, we didn't have all these specialty courts. We didn't have all this drug court, mental health court, RISE court, veteran court, DUI court. So we just all went to prison. And, I hit that point of no return on my third trip to prison when I said, hey, you know what? I will never be anything other than a convict and an inmate, because I can't make it out here in society. And
Right.
that's what I told myself, because, I would get out of prison and, the parole officers would be on my tail. I couldn't get a job quick enough. They'd be talking about violating me. So I would just be like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to get high and not go see my parole officer. And that's when I gave up, was that point of no return of,
Right.
getting, it goes back to, today we have a system that's somewhat designed to help you. I'm still on parole, but the way that they treat me now is a whole lot more respectful, and it's geared to help you, for the
Right.
most part. Now
Mm.
if I was out here ripping and running, they probably wouldn't be trying to help me as much. But I came through the system when it was a slaughterhouse. All the DEA and ATF and all them would get emails saying I'm out of prison. So it was just entrapment. It was just one thing after another. And at that age, I couldn't handle it, and I gave
Right.
up. And
All
I
right.
did hit that point of no return.
Right. So now, Matthew, I guess it's fast forwarding to that around 2010. That's when everything took a sharp turn, a pivotal moment that really speaks to how the system chooses to define people. Now, after multiple convictions, the federal government labeled you incorrigible and sentenced you as an armed career criminal. That kind of label and sentencing enhancement can feel like a life sentence in more ways than one. So when you were labeled incorrigible and sentenced as an armed career criminal, how did that moment land with you emotionally and mentally? How did that land with you?
Man, my initial instinct was anger. I couldn't believe that my own government did this to me. And because we still had options in 2010, I was only 32 years old. And the armed career criminal is designed to where if you have 3 prior convictions of either serious violence or serious drug offense, it triggers the 15-year mandatory minimum. But what's happening here, and it's evident in my case, these are all basically crack pipes, little bit of residue that was found on a bedroom dining table that the parole officers found. They're repeated offenses, but they're not anything significant, and we're talking really minor stuff that really would be a misdemeanor if I wasn't on parole and I didn't have all that suspended time on me. But when the armed career criminal, so what you do on the state level in Arkansas, you plea upward in statute. Almost everything is intent to deliver. It doesn't matter if you get caught with a $10 rock or if you get caught with an ounce. They're throwing intent to deliver on it, especially if you've got parole violations and suspended time over you. You're going to take a higher plea for a reduced sentence. And so, like when the feds picked up my gun charge, they don't look at the actual identifying conviction. They just look at the words conviction, possession with intent to deliver. So what was originally designed to get the worst of the worst off the street literally wrapped up a bunch of drug addicts. And our federal prison said, I was so disgusted when they hit me with that armed career criminal. And I'm still disgusted. I still don't believe it, because I'm not an armed career criminal. I was running around, selling drugs to support an addiction, and I was carrying a gun. I'm guilty of that. But to max somebody out with the enhancement of 15 years mandatory, that's something that Congress agreed to for worst case scenarios, and I'm most definitely not that, and I never
Yeah.
was. I'm not saying I'm innocent. I needed to be locked up. I get it.
Yeah.
If you and I were having a barbecue and the old me cruised through the neighborhood, we would both say that guy needs to be in jail. Okay, I'm
Wow.
not saying I'm innocent, but I'm
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that I needed 15-year mandatory minimum. And so to answer your question, when they hit me with that, it was disbelief. It was
Mhm.
disgusting. And I don't think that the U.S. attorneys had the full scope of my actual core character of what I was doing in the streets. I think that they were, for the most part, kind of blindsided by these statutes
Mhm.
because I did legally fit the criteria. But like I said, if you go down and you look at these are nothing but little crack pipes and just minor possessions.
Right. So, do you think the justice system, or what we call the justice system, does it look at a person's potential or just their record?
No, absolutely not. That what the when you look at the specialty courts, what they're doing is going off potential. But they're not everybody's getting specialty courts for
Mhm.
whatever reason. No, they're going off the record, and they're going off and that's another thing that's frustrating. Our federal prosecutors, our state prosecutors, they should have incentives on success rates as opposed to incentives on convictions. Because if we're going around here just smearing all these people, just loading them down with all these convictions, well, sooner or later that person has to get out of prison. How is that person going to survive? How is that person going to adjust to society if you just max him out on all these
Yeah.
convictions, send him to the worst prison possible, and then you're basically just feeding the beast. So
Yeah.
to answer your question, no, our system right now on the specialty court level is designed to help you and look at your potential. But on the if you don't get specialty court, it's most definitely designed to demolish you. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I
with
agree.
no mercy, with
I
absolutely
agree.
no mercy. And, it's really sad because we see people all the time who get arrested and maybe they know the judge, or maybe their family is significant and nothing happens to them. And then somebody else gets arrested for not even as seriousness of a crime, and they get
Mhm.
demolished because they don't have anybody to call the judge. They don't have anybody to call the prosecutor to ask for any kind of help. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're just not getting the balance that we need to get. And
Mhm.
it's sad because it's not a judicial system designed to build up. It's designed to almost enrich
Definitely
yourself
destroy.
off of other people's misery.
Yeah. And
So
your growth behind bars shows what's possible when a person has
yeah,
access to the right tools. And unfortunately, our system isn't built with that in mind. So that's where your advocacy comes in. You become a strong voice for restorative justice and alternatives to incarceration. Now, you earned over 10 college and vocational certifications while serving time.
I did.
What motivated you to do that?
Man, the armed career criminal, and honestly, the way that our United States came at me and the way that my local police came at me
Mhm.
sparked an inner fire that will not be able to be put out. And that's what motivated me. Man, I hit those yards and I started looking around me, even though at that point I'd already been locked up almost my entire adult life. But when I got this 15-year armed career criminal, it was time to put up and show up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't time to shut up at all. And the way that what really motivated me is I want my voice. I want a voice. I want these people to hear me. I want them to feel me. And I want them to understand that there's a better way. And the only way to do that is through credibility. And the only way to get credibility from these folks is to educate yourself. So that way
Mhm.
you know what you're talking about and they know that you know what you're talking about. So,
Mhm.
man, I just took every single VOTEC course that they offered at Yazoo. They sent me to Yazoo USP at first, and I worked my way down to the medium.
Mhm.
So the USPs, they don't have a whole lot of programming. It's just, it's a dungeon in there and it's built like that for whatever reason. And it's just, it's a throwaway yard. It's for people
Yeah.
who, like me, who just racked up a bunch of convictions and the government believes will never change. So they just lock you up. Now, once I
Mhm.
got to Yazoo Medium, There was some more. There, it was a little bit more open, and there was some more classes. So I took the HVAC and I took the welding at Yazoo Medium, and I got in good with the administration to where I could teach classes,
Mhm.
the release preparation classes and the reentry classes. I became a reentry clerk in the education department at Yazoo Medium. And I started taking college correspondence through the
Mhm.
Rio Salado College. Rio Salado College has a curriculum specifically designed for inmates. It's an incarceration division, and they're based out of Phoenix, and it's a legit college. It's credited,
Mhm.
and they cater specifically to the inmate. And I ended up earning level 1 and level 2 addiction specialist from them. Those are both 1-year college certificate degrees. And then I got the workforce development and community reentry through them, which all in all, those put me at about 60 college credits. Those are 1-year
Wow.
courses apiece. And
Yeah.
then the each VOTEC carries about 10 college credits, and because those are real VOTECs in those federal prisons.
Yeah.
And so all in all, I walked out of there with almost a bachelor's degree worth of
Exactly.
credits.
Now, was
Yeah,
there a
and then
moment in that journey? Was there a moment in that journey where you were learning all this stuff and going to all these classes where you started to look around and was like, dang, this is a whole new version of me? Was there ever a
man,
moment like that?
my drive was so on fire to not be the convict that is supposed to come out of that prison. I mean,
Yeah.
everything is designed for you to be dehumanized. Everything is designed for you to be an animal. And that's it. You go to chow when they say chow, you go to rec when you go to rec. If you see
Mhm.
somebody getting stabbed, you don't say a word, you keep moving. You never
Mhm.
talk to the police. They teach you to be an animal in federal prison. It's a crime factory. You know what I mean? Whites have to sit there, blacks have to sit there, GDs over there, Crips over there. And that's
Yeah.
something that's encouraged by the United States government for control reasons, and I get it. But look what it's doing to the offender. It's truly making them criminals for life, because now they're being told, hey, the government wants me to gangbang. The government wants me to sell dope because they're bringing it in. So now all
Mhm.
of a sudden it's a crime factory. But to answer your question, no, man, my drive was just so on fire to not be what that system makes you be. I
Yeah.
never looked at myself and said that I'm doing something different. Now other people did, and I kept getting jobs here and there inside the prison. The wardens and them knew who I was, and they were proud of me. So I could see the recognition I was getting. But
Mhm.
man, I was just so hungry to come out here and prove these folks wrong on this armed career criminal stuff, and prove these folks wrong on just maxing people out on sentences when you have plenty of options available. That, man, I wasn't focused on me. I was focusing on the reentry.
There you go. Because
And
it's one thing.
and
It's one thing to
that's
talk
what I
about
was
it. Mhm.
that's what I was promoting in there. I was on what's called Christian time, which is, you just show your paperwork, let them know you're not an informant and all this. And I sat with the blacks, I sold with blacks, I sold with Mexicans. I wasn't on that race stuff. I wasn't on gang time. And so I could move better. You know what I'm saying? I didn't
Yeah.
have to have somebody following me around. I didn't have to report to people. So I could just go and program my tail off in that library, man. And
Mhm.
my message in there was trying to help people, man. And I started giving out certificates that people had earned in HVAC and welding to other offenders, and I was getting people in that ordinarily the system wouldn't let in because their disciplinary file. They'd be like, "Man, I don't want him in there," and I would go to the principal and I'd go to the SIS and I would say, "Hey, man, look, if you trust me on this, I'm not going to fail you. I'm going to get this guy certified and get him in and out of here." And within 6 months, that guy would leave with a certificate, and I was doing that one after another, to where SIS, the inmates, administration, all of them knew that my best interest was at heart. And I
Mhm.
was able to go talk to the police by myself. I was able to talk to the warden by myself because they knew that my motive was pure and I wasn't on any kind of bullcrap in there.
You're right, right, right. Because it's one thing to talk
You
about
know?
reform; it's another to live it. And after serving 18
Yeah.
years, you came home, you jumped right into service, using
Yeah.
everything you've been through to help others in recovery. I was in a similar situation when I was locked up, where I was like that intermediary. I would talk to inmates, I would be able to talk to the wardens and stuff. I was able to move freely. Now, what was the biggest challenge after 18 years that you faced? When you came home, what
Man,
was the biggest challenge?
it's something that's still challenging today. And that's having to blend into society and explain to people that I have 21 felony convictions and I've served 18 years of my life in prison, because, those sentences are usually reserved for murder, rape, the worst of the
Yeah.
worst. And so, like, when I'm mingling around people, they don't know that I've done that amount of time. They might be able to say, hey, this guy's probably done some time or he's rough around the edges. But to sit down and be like, hey, I've done 18 years of my life, 14 of it in federal prison, it's a tough sell.
Yeah.
And, it's just, that's the biggest challenge I go through right now. And it's really frustrating, man. Doing that bid wasn't as frustrating as getting out here and having a stigma on you. Especially when you're not committing crimes, especially because I'm in a bachelor's degree program. They've taken my transcript. Within about 6 months, I'll have my bachelor's. I work out of rehab. I volunteer in the county jail. On my Facebook, I'm hanging out with the sheriff, the chief of police. But I still have that stigma of what I did decades ago. And it's the most frustrating thing on the planet because, man, I'm not that person anymore. I'm still on federal and state parole. And, I'm on, I'm drug tested 2 or 3 times a month. It's random on the feds. It just depends. It's on a case by case basis, I guess. But, due to the fact that I've been to prison so many times, I'm probably on maximum security, maximum supervision. But it's just frustrating having to not be the person you was, but still have to be accountable for those actions. And those actions were 15 years ago. And,
long
that's
ago.
the biggest, that's the biggest challenge right now, man. It's just blending into society with all that stigma. And it's frustrating. Now, but once you get past that and the person fills you out for 6 to 8 months and he sees or she sees consistency, that, that stigma starts to lift and they start giving you trust and they start saying, hey, maybe this guy's different or maybe he did get a bad deal in the system. But, that initial 6 months of introducing yourself is just really difficult. And I think that there's a lot that we can do together to break that stigma. I'm not sure what that would look like, but I mean, we've got to advocate for that. We've got to let people know that, hey, there is people coming out of these prisons that aren't trying to go back. They're trying to have a career. They want to live right next door to you and raise a family just like you do. And we don't want to have that barrier.
Yeah. So how did you end up working with Harbor House and what did you do there today?
Man, well, I went through the program 3 times back in my addiction and failed it. And end up getting kicked out one time, end up running off the next times, and relapsing on the third. But anyways, when I started getting these level 1 and level 2 addiction certifications from a legit college, I started I reached out to the CEO and I told her my story and I told her where I was and explained that, hey, look, I'm guilty of this and I'm doing everything I can to rehabilitate myself. And I have a strong desire to work at Harbor House and use my experiences as a way to help people. And she immediately wrote me back and sent me a book of the curriculum. She said, well, if you want to work here, you're going to have to study this curriculum. She ended up going somewhere else and we got a new CEO. And so I just started writing the program director and started giving him updates and sending him my certificates, because when you're hungry and you're desperate, man, you're going to seek out what you want in life. And that's what I wanted, man. I wanted to work at a rehab and I wanted to be part of the solution. And when I got on the streets, I immediately hit him up on Facebook and said, hey, I'd like to have lunch with you, put a face to the letters. And we met up and he said, give me a year clean on the streets and come interview. We'll see what happens. And I gave him a year clean on the streets and I interviewed and he ended up giving me a job. And since then, I became certified as a professional recovery coach from the University of Arkansas and a peer support specialist from the University of Arkansas. So I've earned 2 college career certifications since he gave me the job. I've been out there. It'll be a year in July. So I'm consistently progressing. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But to answer your question, I just started reaching out in prison, man, and applying myself. Man, those certificates that you get from the release preparation and the adult continuing education, man, if anybody's listening and they're in the USP or they're they're on yard, man, those certificates are valuable, man, because those are legit certificates that you can lay down in front of an employer and you can explain to them that this is what I did in prison. As opposed to coming out worse, I'm coming out better. And, everybody that I've showed those certificates to, the non-college release preparation and adult continuing education. Everybody said, I'm glad you did something productive with your time. So, I mean, those certificates may not seem like nothing when you're in there doing a bid, but man, those certificates are real, and they're from the United States Department of Justice, from the Education Department, and they carry weight out here in the streets, whether people know it or not.
That's crazy. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. They just think
man,
they
no,
just
man,
get it.
man, let me tell you something. My people inside the prison were like, man, I don't know why you programming. I don't know why you getting all the certificates, man. That ain't gonna do nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And like, man, I was like, dude, I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna get a job with these certificates. You know what I'm saying? Hey, y'all go do something. And man, I bounced right back out here and got a job with them certificates, man. And it's just like, man, if I could, if I could push anything to the inmate right now, it'd be them programs, man, because you're going to get something out of it. You know, not only that certificate, but you're going to think better. You know, they've got public speaking in there. They've got entrepreneurship opportunity. They have got a lot of programs in that education division in the federal prison. It's just, man, you've got to put your name on it. You got to go to class. You know what I'm saying?
There you go. And that work you're doing today is proof that people can change. And more importantly, that they deserve the chance to. Now, as we start to wrap up, I want to leave space for some reflections and maybe a little advice for those listening who need to hear it. Just like what you said, you know, get those certificates. What would you say to someone besides getting certificates? Someone who currently incarcerated who wants to know how to change, but really don't know how to. What do you tell them to do?
Man, first of all, I'm gonna say start cutting them homeboys back. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know that federal prison isn't what it used to be, man. We don't need all that. We don't have to click up the way we're clicking up, man. For one thing, I would say be independent, as independent as you can be. I understand some people are in gang situations, man. They just can't be all the way independent. But man, get yourself as independent as possible and program. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter if you're facing another decade, 20 years. I done see my cellmate was the guy that lived right next to me was Guy Fisher from New York, and he and I became buddies. And he had a life sentence, and I've watched that man get that life sentence overturned from programming, taking college correspondence classes. And he convinced the judge to let him out. He did about 40 years in federal prison. His name was Guy Fisher, and I sat there and watched that man leave prison from programming on a life sentence. I'm telling you, it can be done, man, because Guy Fisher is free. He's a buddy of mine, and the man had a life sentence. And what they looked at was his prison conduct. Who is this man today? What has he done to get here? And that man had a PhD. Of course, he'd been in there 40 years. He had a lot more time than us to get it done. But he had a PhD. He had every class they took. He taught every class they took. He did everything that they offered. And they let that man go on a life sentence. And he's out here. He's in New York right now working with all kinds of troubled youth, trying to get people out of gangs, trying to get people out of the streets. And that's what it's about, man. It's about changing who you are while you're locked up, man, because if not, you're going to come out here and these folks are going to lock you right back up, man.
Right back up. Hey, man, if you can, contact Guy Fisher, man. Tell him what we're doing over here. I'd love to have him on the show. Maybe both of y'all can come on the show and like share with both of you on the show. That would be awesome, bro. Yeah. So what do you see yourself and your advocacy going in the next few years? What's up for you for the next few years?
Man, I think I'm wanting to get into more restorative justice, and I'm wanting to get into giving people 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th chances, even if they don't deserve it or not, even if their criminal record says, hey, this person don't need any breaks. As long as there's some wiggle room in there, man, I see myself creating some type of program in Arkansas where people are getting halfway houses, not prison. Now, granted, there's some stuff that you can't overlook and people have to go to prison. I get that. Right. But our prisons right now are full of people who we had options on still, and we chose to just give them prison. And, that came from judicial frustration. Most of these people, the judges and prosecutors have been dealing with these people over and over and over again. So they're just tired of them. So they give them a decade in federal prison to get them out of there. I see myself gaining enough credibility and stability to have some type of program and halfway houses and ankle monitors to keep people out of prison. And while they're in these programs, to get them educated through HVAC, welding, plumbing, stuff
Trades,
like that,
trades. Yeah.
barbershop, if,
Right.
and if they're females or if they're into that kind of stuff, get them salon, get their
Mhm.
cosmetic stuff going, their
Trades.
eyelashes.
Yeah.
Yeah, trades. And that's where I see me going in the next 5 years, is really opening this thing up to keep people from going to prison in Arkansas that otherwise could be rehabilitated.
All right. Now, before we go, we got a quick lightning round. We like to
I'm
throw
ready.
this out, I guess, every now and then. Just a few fun, reflective questions to round things out. Now, the first question is, what is the book that changed your life?
The book that changed my life is a guy by the name of Jimmy McGill. His story is identical to Jimmy McGill. His story is identical to mine. It's not the killer Jimmy McGill. There's two. This guy, he was a career criminal in Arkansas. He had lived his whole life in and out of prison. He's got 21 or 22 felonies, just like me, and he's done about 18 to 20 years in prison, just like me. He changed his life, got a pardon from the governor. Now he has a program called Next Step Recovery. It's in Arkansas, and it's doing just the same thing I'm hoping to get into, which is keeping people out of prison and getting them rehabilitated. But he's got a book called From Prison to Purpose, and it's by Jimmy McGill. And that book breaks down exactly who we are, why we are, and what we need to do about it. And it's called From Prison to Purpose by Jimmy McGill. And that book most definitely changed my life.
Awesome. So what's the favorite quote that you have that keeps you kind of grounded? What quote that you kind of walk around in your head that just keeps you motivated, keeps you moving, keeps you focused on what you need to do?
That's a good question. I'm gonna have to go with I'm gonna have to go with
I put you on the spot, didn't I?
You put me on the spot, but man, I don't remember which politician did it.
Okay.
Said it,
Okay.
It was on the terms of, it's not what your government can do for you, but what you can do for your government. And it's
right.
with not. It's in line. The way I apply it is, I'm not going to accept what the government put on me, which was the armed career criminal, which is the career criminal, which is all this stuff. But it's what I can do for the government in form of reforming other inmates, getting people breaks, getting people educated, rehabilitated, and put back into society 10 times better instead of 10 times worse. So the quote that I'm going to go on is, and I don't remember what president.
I remember. I think it's JFK.
It's not what your government can do for you; it's what you can do for your government.
What you can do for your government.
I translate that into restorative justice and just bettering the people around me that are caught in the same system I was caught in.
Okay. All right. This one's kind of interesting right here. Now, it's kind of twofold. It's gonna go back and it's gonna bring you forward. All right. First one is one word to describe who you were. Just one word to describe who you were, and then give me one word to describe who you are now.
Yeah.
One word.
Man, the person I was a reckless, misguided.
So reckless, misguided
adult child.
Okay.
Which means you're walking around as an adult, but your mind is that of a kid. So, I was an adult. I was doing childish things as an adult. So I'm going to say reckless, misguided adult child.
Okay. What about now?
Now I'm a reformed ex-offender. That's what I am. And that's what I stand on.
There you go, man.
A rehabilitated ex-offender.
There you go, Matthew. Thank you for your not only sharing your story, but for living proof that redemption is real and that transformation is possible, no matter how the system tries to define you. Your honesty, your work, and your advocacy reminds us that people are more than their past, like reckless. What was it? Reckless, misguided, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right? Reckless, misguided adult child. And I think that's what we're seeing out here. I don't see us having a whole lot of criminals out here as much as just reckless, misguided adult children. Because when I see these guys, when I'm out here in the streets and I see these guys out here thugging, I don't look at them as thugs and criminals. I look at them as misguided, reckless adult children, people who can be changed, people who have potential. You know what I'm saying? Whether they're running around here carrying a gun, They may be selling dope. You can see what they're doing, but that's not them. That's what something has taught them to be. And, you know, that's what they are. That's what I was. And I believe that that's what we're seeing. I don't see a nation full of criminals running around here. I see a nation full of misguided, reckless adult children.
There you go. All right. So I'm going to close it out, but I want you to stick around, because to our listeners, if this conversation moved you, please share it. Tag someone who needs to hear this, because stories like Matthew's, they don't just shift perspectives, they start movements. And we're just getting started. Big things are on the horizon for the Conviction Fiction. In the weeks ahead, we're diving into entrepreneurship after incarceration, the how-tos. If you haven't checked it out, be sure to check out the Star Nova series from the show. So whether you're behind the wall, just coming home, or standing beside someone who is, we're building this space for you. Until next time, stay grounded, stay rising, and remember, your story isn't over. It's just getting started. I want to thank you guys for joining. And Matthew, stick around. I want to talk to you a little bit more, but this is the Conviction Fiction.